Welcome to a Leader's Journey podcast. I'm your host, Joel Gunn, and I've got Scott back with me on the show. The last episode was really good, so I was excited to have Scott back. Scott, welcome back.
Absolutely. Glad to be back.
And we wrapped up the last show talking just moments about your new book. And by the way, thanks for the autographed copy.
Absolutely.
And it's got my attention. It's a topic that a lot of people need to hear. Some topics that are hard to practice. Mm-hmm. And so you break that down nicely. But it generated a few questions for me. I thought I'd field with you and just see where the conversation goes.
Sure.
So the first one was, well, I guess kind of give us a synopsis of the book first so people have a reference point.
Yeah, so the book's title is Inspired Living, and the subtitle is Assemble the Puzzle of Your Calling by Mastering Your Time, Your Talent, and Your Treasures. So it's kind of that area of, again, where I work with folks. I call myself a stewardship coach. I work with folks around time, talent, and treasures. That's kind of the shorthand for what stewardship means in the Christian circles. And in doing that, really over the last 30 plus years, formally, I started my coaching business in 2011, went full-time in 2017, but really I've been doing it as a school teacher and then doing it in the corporate world. A lot of the work I did was around this area of coaching and developing leaders. And I kept noticing, patterns of what was holding people back. So what I've done in the book is kind of tried to take that 35 years worth of, here's how you get started on this, figuring out what your calling is, or if you've already kind of figured, well, I'm kind of on that path, but maybe I'm being held back a little bit. I'm stuck because I can't get my time right. I can't get my money right. I can't get my mind right, whatever it is. Here's some quick things that you can do to get you unstuck and at least moving forward. Mm-hmm. May not master, this isn't about mastery. This isn't about solving every problem on the planet, but it's getting you unstuck and beginning to kind of put that puzzle together so that you can move more in the direction of what you really, truly believe you're put on this planet to do.
Good. I like that. So podcast is called A Leader's Journey. So this question revolves around how can leaders align their personal purpose with their professional roles to achieve fulfillment?
So the idea, first off, is I think we're separating it a lot of times, personal purpose, professional. And here's the separation that I do think is valid. We all have different roles. We have different assignments, is what I call them, that we serve. And some of them are professional. I'm a leader in a company. I run my own business. I'm an employee, whatever, right? We have our professional role, our career, if you say. Then we also have kind of our personal life, right? And we have roles like husband, father, mother, church member, volunteer, whatever. So we kind of put those in two buckets and treat them like they're completely separate. And the reason those are separate is those are really just your assignments. Those are what you do. The purpose part of it is deeper than that. The purpose part of that is but why do you do all those things? What is it about those things that gives you energy? What is it about those things that gives you heart, that gives you that feeling of fulfillment? Because truthfully, that's the purpose part. And a lot of times it's about looking for where in those roles am I getting that purpose fulfilled. And it may not be in every role, and it's definitely not going to be in everything in every role. Using the example, I always tell people, there's a certain amount of work that you have to do just because you're alive. It's going to come. Somebody has to do the laundry. Mm-hmm. Occasionally you have to take a shower. These sorts of just normal functional stuff. Those are usually not where your purpose is fulfilled. But within that day job, that thing that you're doing, that career, that other role like that. Okay, let's examine it and start thinking through there. What are the parts of it that give me energy, that give me life, that make me feel like I'm fulfilled? Mm-hmm. And then it's a matter of starting to look for those patterns. And so I have people do a combination of kind of two exercises. One is looking backwards, the other is looking forward. So looking backwards is just sit down and brainstorm every role that you've ever had in your life, not just career. I said every role on purpose, and I pointed out at the beginning, personal and professional. Every volunteer opportunity, every relationship kind of role, every role that you can think of. Brainstorm those, put them down on paper, and then make kind of 2 columns. What did I love about it? What did I hate about it? What gave me energy? What took energy away? Whichever way you want to phrase that, whatever makes your mind bubble up. And just start writing things down and begin to look for those patterns, begin to look for, well, even so, like for me, I was a school teacher. Well, the part of the school teaching that gave me energy was the engaging with the student, not just about the curriculum, but it was engaging with the students about their life and about their purpose and about their vision for their future and that kind of stuff. That's what gave me energy. I taught science, but did a lot of that other stuff. Oh, okay. And then when I was in the corporate world, well, yeah, I had to fly all over the country and do client work and this and manage a big team. But man, the stuff that really gave me energy was in managing that team when I got into a position where my job was to develop other leaders. Oh man, gave me energy. I loved that. I had to do this other stuff, but that's really what I love. And looking at that, I was like, well, wait a minute. How can I do a role that allows me to do more of this, pour into others, develop others, help them break free stuff, and less of some of this other stuff that wasn't so fun? That's the looking back exercise. The looking forward exercise is, I like to frame it as what I call the airport question. Here's the question. Imagine for a minute it's 5 years in the future. And you happen to be walking through an airport, and as you get to your gate, the dreaded message comes across, flight delayed. You're stuck in the airport. It's delayed for at least 4 hours. Well, you do what everyone does when stuck in an airport for 4 hours. You go look for either a restaurant or a bar, depending on your particular choice of poison. And you want to go find a place to either grab a bite to eat or get a drink. And as you're walking into, again, restaurant or bar, whichever one you would look for, you happen to run into a friend who you haven't seen for the last 5 years. Remember, this is 5 years in the future. They're a dear friend today. You haven't seen them for 5 years for whatever reason. And it turns out they've got a layover too. So what do? You go grab a table together in kind of a quiet you can find corner in an airport, and you catch up. And as they look at you across the table, as you sit down together and you've ordered your food, you've ordered your drink, whatever it is, and they look at you and they go, man, how has your life been? And you look back at them, and with a sincere answer, you say, the last 5 years have been the best 5 years of my life because. Your job is to tell me what comes after because. What would have made you sincerely tell this dear friend, man, here's what's happened in my relationships. Here's what's happened in my finances. Here's what's happened in my career. Here's what's happened in my spiritual walk. What's happened in all of those areas of your life that made you say, man, this is the best 5 years I've ever had. Between those two exercises, as a leader, you can start seeing what do I need to be doing more of and what do I need to be doing less of. Now it's a matter of doing the hard work of creating that reality. That's the hard part. But the first step before you ever create anything is knowing what you're creating. If you don't have a map, if you don't have a destination, you'll never get anywhere. So that's usually where I start with leaders, on that idea of aligning your personal purpose with your job. Because you may discover, what? This is already really in pretty good alignment. This is the right thing. And some of that frustration and fear and anger goes away. Or you may find, no, this is never going to get me where I want to go. Okay, great. Now, what do we need to put in place to begin to transition? But either way, you now have that first step to be able to take action.
Do you ever find, as you go through that process with people, that they lie to themselves?
Only if they're human.
Okay.
The dogs are pretty good at not lying to themselves, but people are pretty bad about it. Yeah.
How do you walk them through that?
You keep asking questions. This is one of the beauties of doing this. Again, you can do this exercise on your own. The exercise is in the book, and it's valuable. But one of the things that can really add another depth to it is doing it with another person, as a coach like me, could be a friend, it could be your spouse, but doing it with another person who will challenge your paradigms and challenge your thinking. And so when you start saying, well, this is what I hate. Okay, why do you hate that? Tell me more. So it's not, you get beyond just the surface, that first level deep. They talk about it's kind of like the 7-layer dip, right? You want to get to the 7th layer. That's where all the good stuff is. It's that idea of, okay, tell me more. Why do you hate that? Why do you love that? Paint me a picture. What does that look like for you? Because in general, when we first do this exercise, we kind of get to the surface level, and you kind of have to go back through it 2 or 3 times and keep asking yourself, you sound like the toddler. Why? And at the end of it, usually you'll get a better picture. And oftentimes having another person being able to kind of help you walk through that and visualize that can be really helpful.
So one clue might be if I answer both questions in 5 minutes or less.
If it took you 5 minutes or less, you didn't answer the questions.
On a serious note, what would you tell somebody to budget for this exercise?
I would do it over several settings first off, but spend 20, 30 minutes on it the first time, and then let it sit for a little while, and then come back to it and touch it again and do it again 20, 30 minutes. I have some folks that'll sit down and just knock it, spend 8 hours on it and really knock it out. There are people that will do that, but for most of us, that's not the best way to do this kind of reflection activity, because for a lot of us, most of us that are adults, the last time anyone ever kind of asked us what we wanted to be when we grow up was when we were like, 14, 15, 16 years old. And the truth is, that's a question you should be asking yourself all the time. If you're still sucking wind, you can still be asking yourself, well, what do I want the next 5 years to look like? What do I want to be different? What do I want to be the same? What do I love? What do I hate? What do I want to change? And should. And yet the truth is, we kind of train people to stop asking that question once they're on their, quote, career path. And truth be told, ask that question all the time and reinvent yourself.
Do you see one generation being better at this exercise than another?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot about the generational differences, and I haven't really seen it in terms of one being better or worse. They're all different. I mean, we have different strengths and weaknesses. We have different giftings. We have different facings of it. But, I've worked with my Gen Z kind of very young adults, 14, 15, 16-year-olds currently, which is, I don't even know what generation they call that now, but it would be after Gen Z, whatever that is.
I've heard Gen Alpha lately.
Gen Alpha, okay. And they'll name themselves eventually, and then we'll all call them that. But, the millennials, which, everyone always talks about millennials like they're young. Most of them are like turning 40 now. It's like they're not young. They're middle-aged, all the way at Gen X, which is what generation I'm in, and on. I've worked with folks across all of the age range, and we all have challenges with it. I just think they're different challenges, if that makes sense.
Do you see a common theme
in terms
besides people lying to themselves, right, about their calling or what they're passionate about? Are you seeing any other common themes among the generations?
I think, one of the things that comes up for a lot of folks is, again, this idea that, I'm trying to think how to phrase it. Basically, that I have to do my career because I have to eat. I have to make money. I have to survive. I have to do that stuff, and I just kind of have to suck it up and do it. There's no way I can find real enjoyment or real passion or whatever. And again, I will tell you that there are some people that their career is just kind of their instrument for survival, and they go do their passion purpose over here in another way. Nothing wrong with that. That is not a bad thing. And I'm not of the school of thought that your how you make money and your purpose, passion kind of have to 100% overlap for you to have fulfillment. I think you can have some separation. But at the same time, looking at your life and saying, there's one component of my life that I absolutely hate everything about it, but I'm completely fulfilled in all other components, and somehow that makes me happy. I don't accept that paradigm. There's a way to bring joy to all components of your life at some level. And work should not be the one area of your life where, you just dread getting up every morning and going to work. If it's that, we can change that. There's a different answer to that question. There is another way to put food on the table and not have to just go to a workplace where you're miserable, mistreated, whatever. And I do see folks a lot of times kind of accept that work has to be it's always the one area that I hate. And it's like, we can change that.
Use the word dread. Is that another good filter as you're going through this exercise that we're talking about?
Yeah. Words like dread, words like, fear, words like frustration, Again, for me, I like to think in terms of energy flow. That's the paradigm I use. There are like now with, there are clients that I get on the call with and, hour goes by and man, at the end of that hour, it's like, give me 5 more conversations like that. I'm ready to go. I'm hyped up. And then there are other parts of my job where it's like, well, I need to do that because it's part of the function of the job and it has to get done. But, truth be told, at the end of that hour of doing that, I'm like, I need a nap. This is not fun. So it's not that every component of everything, but there are parts of your life that give you that energy, and then there are parts of your life that drain that energy.
So on the drain energy side, this is a question, not a statement. Let me just rephrase it as a question. Is it your experience that it's best just to put it in the big drain energy bucket, or is there any relevance to break it out further? Like these are annoyances versus this is a dread versus this is a fear.
Sure. Yeah, for some folks, it is good to kind of go, again, we talked about earlier, kind of the 7-layer deep, going deeper. You start to quantify. I would say the truth is that's true on the good side too, with things that give me energy. Yeah, but why does it give you energy? Because there are things that give you energy from a professional kind of, it gives me intellectual energy. It makes me feel intellectually fulfilled. And then there are things that make you feel emotionally fulfilled or relationally fulfilled or even financially or any of those other buckets or spiritually. So it is kind of that degree of going a little deeper and thinking about not just I don't get energy from this, but why don't I get energy from this? Because again, like there may be some things that don't give you energy that you just functionally have to do to be alive and be a human being. Again, I don't think there's that many people that think, yay, I get to fold laundry, and that gives me energy. There's probably some, don't at me in the comments if you're one of those people. there are people that get energy from it, but most people don't. And yet functionally we have a certain degree to which we have to do that just to live.
You talk a lot in your book about relationships, which I appreciate. What practical advice would you give leaders on how to build meaningful relationships for personal and professional growth?
So a lot of times I think as leaders, we feel cut off. A lot of leaders kind of feel like they're on an island, especially if you're in an environment where like you're the only leader at a particular quote level.
So if you're CEO, it's lonely at the top.
Or even if you're in a middle management role, but the company's small enough that you're like, you are the middle manager. You have a boss and you have people below that report to you.
So no peers.
But there's no peer, So whatever level it is, I think a lot of times once we get into leadership, there starts to have that sense of isolation. And so one of them is identifying, if that's you, who are your peers? Now, if again, you're the one CEO in that company, well, then your peers may be other CEOs. Who are the people and by the way, if you're in business for yourself, you also have peers. You have other people that are in business, like that. And it's deliberately finding ways to connect with those people. That could be networking groups, that could be a chamber of commerce, that could be informal networks, that could be finding people that are willing to mentor or pour into you or even just have a reciprocal relationship where you kind of mentor and coach each other. Now, obviously, in some corporate environments and things, you have to worry about confidentiality and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm not suggesting that anyone violate any sort of principles like that, but you can still find peers, but you actually have to actively do it. And so where I started, for me, obviously if you're in a company that's big enough that you can start in the company, start there. Reach out to other people that are at the peer environment and just say, hey, I'd like to have an informal once a month, once every 2 week, kind of debrief session. How's your job going? Whatever it is, how's your work going? But be deliberate about setting that up. And if you don't have it within your own company, then again, I'd go talk to my boss first to make sure that they're aware I'm doing it. But there's a lot of networking groups out there that, you just basically plug yourself into. It could be one formally around leadership. It could not be. This could even be something, and again, this kind of now brings us over into the personal life. It could be through your personal circles too. It could be through a church environment or something like that. But
some sort of civic group,
civic groups, volunteer work, nonprofits. I serve on a lot of nonprofit boards. Well, guess who else serves on nonprofit boards?
Other leaders.
All of a sudden now I've got a circle of leaders that I know outside of my job that I can pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I'm dealing with this. How would you handle it? Have you ever dealt with this situation? What's going on? Or maybe even just, I just need to talk about this. I don't need any advice. I just need somebody else that gets it to listen. Great. You listened. Click, and that's it. And sometimes we just want to be heard. And that's the problem is oftentimes as a leader, because, if you're sharing upwards, there's a certain degree of vulnerability that comes from that. And if you're sharing downward, well, now there's a certain degree of confidentiality, and there's things I can share and there's things I can't share that comes from that, which is why peer works well, is because usually you're at kind of the same level of conversation.
Yeah, I work a lot with CEOs and business owners, and what the business owner doesn't want to do is go, guys, I really need to talk to you. I'm not sure how I'm going to make payroll this week.
Right.
Bad conversation.
Bad conversation. Not going to go well,
So that's where you need a peer at another company, business owner, to go, have you ever had to face not being able to make payroll? What'd you do? Am I going to get through this?
And I've even, with the small business circles, I've even had folks where I've challenged them to, okay, go find 3 other people that run a business like yours in a city that's not yours. You're in Cincinnati, go call someone in Philadelphia.
Industry peer group.
And find somebody, because here's the thing, they're in a completely different market. There is no competition. If you're the local carpet guy, he's the local carpet guy. I don't think somebody in Chicago is calling the guy in Philly to do an install. It's just not going to happen. So there isn't that competition, and yet there's that commonality of, we're kind of facing some of the same problems and sort of the same work level and market level. And people are like, well, nobody's going to talk. Yes, they will. I've had people do that, hundreds of times, and I think once has somebody said, no, I'm not interested. Usually they're desperate for it too. They're like, absolutely. If I can pick your brain, you can pick mine. Let's set up a time. Let's talk. I think we are more in fear of that reach out because we are afraid somebody's going to say no, when the reality is most people are going to say yes if you actually ask the question.
Financial success motivates lots of things. You touched on that in your book. And so in that example you just gave, well, I don't want to talk to this other guy because I might give him away my trade secrets. and so that's often a fear with business owners, is if I go to my industry peers, then I might give away my secrets. And so there's other opportunities out there, peer groups, where only one person from the industry is allowed at the table.
Right.
And so you're talking to people not only not in your industry, but they're in your market. So they understand the labor challenges. They understand what City Hall's doing that's favorable or not favorable, what the state's doing or not doing. So that's another place.
Benefit to both.
Yeah. So a lot of my healthier clients are part of both.
Right.
A peer group, industry, trade association or something, and then a peer group that's, only one per forum is, from any industry. So I just wanted to point that out. But thinking about that financial success piece, you talk about that, touch on that in your book as well. And how can leaders balance financial success with building the supportive community to prevent the loneliness? And just kind of big picture, or if you have a specific way you want to answer that. But how do you wrestle with that, man, I got to grow the business because I want it to be financially viable and successful, and I want to give my family all these things that I didn't have, right? That's often
I want to be able to provide.
the
I want to do
temptation,
those things,
right? But at the same time, it takes work to build relationships and community and hours, like real hours. It's not, you can't just send an email and have community. And if you could, even typing up that email takes time.
Took them out of time.
Right. So what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think, first off, I think it's kind of a false premise that spending the time on building the relationships means I'm taking time away from building the financial success of the business. That's the false dichotomy that I think we've set up in our head. And I get it because, again, there's only so many hours in the day. And if I'm spending time, it's opportunity cost, right? If I spend an hour doing this, I can't spend an hour doing this. But here's the thing that I've discovered. The folks that are plugged into community are the same folks that end up with the most financial success. Because all of a sudden, instead of the focus being on, quote, the bottom line, they start realizing, wait a minute, this relationship stuff, the emotional intelligence stuff that many leaders kind of poo-poo and say, yeah, that's a waste of time. We don't need it. People should just leave their feelings at home. Yeah, people don't leave their feelings at home. That doesn't happen. If they had a fight with their wife before they got to work, they brought that fight into work with them. And you have to acknowledge that and recognize that. And by the way, if that was you brought that fight into work with you and you're dealing with it that day. And that's the way it is. And so it's recognizing that this relationship piece is actually a valuable part of building business success. And that could include financial success. I think there's more to business success than financial, but that is a measure. And for many people, it's an important measure. I know folks that come to me and they've been, how long have you been in business? 3 years. Well, how much are you paying yourself? Oh, I've never taken a paycheck. That's not business. That's an expensive hobby. You're not really in business yet. Let's fix that. Let's figure out a way that you can actually bring a paycheck home because right? And yet that's where a lot of us struggle and start is this idea that, well, the only way to build financial success is to just constantly turn that wheel and look at the bottom line and grow the business. I don't even argue that. I've grown my business finances. I haven't scaled my business size in terms of staff or other things. A lot of people, only way to grow the business is to add more. Well, no, that's actually not true. There's other ways to scale a business. So let's talk about those. It's doing the work of the white space work, the thinking work, the closing the door and being the leader of the business and working on the business instead of in the business, stepping out of that. Most of us, when we go into business for ourselves, we go into it because we're good at something. I'm the good HVAC guy, so I'm going to go open my own HVAC business so I can run my own business.
Technical expert.
I'm a technical expert. I'm good at it. And we forget the fact that there's this whole other set of skills that we need in business that have nothing to do with knowing how to fix an air conditioner, if you're the HVAC guy. It has to do with employee management and payroll and knowing the bottom line and being able to look at a P&L and know what the heck it means and, all of these other, time management and all of this other stuff that comes along for the ride. And I would say that that's where the plugging into the network becomes invaluable because you're not talking to other HVAC guys to get better at fixing air conditioners. You're talking to the other HVAC guys to get better at running an HVAC business. The best way to learn that is to go talk to people who have done it, and go, you've managed to grow this into a business that I admire. I'd love that. And most of those guys, the guys and gals that have done that, they want to pour into the next generation. It's again, they never talk to me. I've had some conversations with folks, whether it's on my podcast or whether it's personally and professionally. I picked up the phone and called some folks that people are like, wait, you've talked to who? Because why would they talk to you? Because I called them and asked them if they would be willing to talk, and they said, yeah, I got an hour. Let's set up a time. We think of that relationship part as somehow taking away from the important stuff. And I would argue it's actually, it's opportunity cost well spent. Now, that doesn't mean you spend all day, every day doing nothing but talking to other people about your business, but there has to be a component of time and growth that's spent on growing that part of what you learn how to do. And the best way to do that is talk to other people who have done it.
Where do you think, final question here, where do you think leaders struggle the most with giving themselves permission to build relationships?
I think a lot of it is, again, it's that admitting that I don't know everything. It's that humility of saying, I may not know all the answers to these questions. I need to ask for help, because if you think about it as a leader, you're looked at by everyone else a lot of times as the person that has all the answers. Mm-hmm. Now, I would argue that's a false picture of what a leader should be or can be or is, but we are looked at that way. That sort of, people come to the office so that they can get an answer from the leader. And so part of it is that humility of being able to go, wait, I don't know all the answers. And what I found interesting is once you break that wall and start talking to other leaders, it then also allows you to treat your staff differently and start actually having, because I don't know about you, but when I've been in leadership roles, sometimes people come in and they're like, I need an answer to this question. It's like, well, what do you think? Mm-hmm. Well, I think I should do this. Okay, good. Go do that. Mm-hmm. That was a long conversation, it's like, because they already knew the answer to the question. Mm-hmm. They really just wanted permission is what they wanted. Mm-hmm. And eventually, by the way, they stopped coming in my office and asking permission because they figured out, he said yes to it. I just need to go take care of the problem and get it done. And my time, effort, and work level goes down because I started training them to make the decisions that they could make. Mm-hmm. And they know the difference between something they need to elevate. And, we're back to the conversation about time management from last week, where it's, about that sort of idea of email management and things. Mm-hmm. So you can do that. So one of them is that humility piece. And then the other piece, I think, is as leaders, we've got so much on our plate all of the time. And it's back to what you just asked before, that idea of somehow or another spending some time on relationship is taking away from the doing the work, the managing the business, the putting money, bringing clients in, doing all of that. And that's somehow going to cause my business to fail or go under. And recognizing that the bringing clients in, the doing all of that work, that's kind of the management piece of your role. That's the keeping the trains running on time, keeping the payroll done, keeping all of that stuff. It's important, but the leadership part is the relational part. It is the part that involves, I've got to talk to other human beings. I've got to, engage with my employees. I've got to engage with other leaders. I've got to find a way to acknowledge and develop leadership within my company and train other people. Otherwise, it's always going to be on me. Mm-hmm. And how do I get these folks to step into the roles that they're capable of being and be the and stop being the employee that you have to micromanagement everything they do all day long, which ain't fun for you and isn't fun for them, and turn them into an employee where they're actually out there doing the job. And guess what? They're more successful. They're happier. You're more successful, you're happier, and the business is more successful. Where's the loss there? But to get to that point, you have to develop that leadership piece and that emotional piece and that relational piece. And I think a lot of times we fail to see that that's part of doing it. Mm-hmm. That's part of being a leader.
Mm-hmm. Scott, that's really good. I appreciate the things you shared on the episode today. How could people get your book?
So I put a page together that has all the information over at inspiredstewardship.com/journey.
Okay.
It's got the book on there. It's got some free resources for folks. They also could go to inspiredlivingbook.com and go directly to the book if that's all they're interested in. But if you check out the inspiredstewardship.com/journey, there's some other resources there that folks may be interested in as well.
Great. Scott, thanks again for your time. Driving all this way, 2 hours round trip.
Absolutely.
Honored to spend this little bit of time with me. And thanks again.
Thank you.